Hello BookTube, Books with Banks back again with another video today. We're going to do another book series ranking, and this one is going to be a series that several years ago now, probably 8 or 9 years ago, this is a series or kind of a collection of different smaller series that all exist in the same universe that really got me into reading larger series, reading at a quicker rate, and got me more interested than just, loving whatever random books were assigned at school. And this is, as you probably know from the thumbnail or the title of the video, if you click on the video, this is my ranking of Isaac Asimov's larger expanded robots and Foundation universe. So for those of you who don't know, Isaac Asimov, he's famous, probably most famous for writing the Foundation trilogy and then a bunch of robot short stories such as, that have been, compiled in a lot of different collections like iRobot, things like that. So basically all of his robot stories take place in the future, but it's not too distant future, and a lot of those stories are still pretty Earth-centric, still pretty centered around at least the solar system. And then he wrote four novels about robots and about, the robots adhering to and sort of evolving, and their sort of their sociology, maybe, is a way to say it, of the robots evolving along the lines of their three laws that they have to follow. Anyone who's read any of these books or maybe seen even like the movie iRobot probably recognizes these laws. First law, can't harm a human. Second law, always obey orders given to you by a human if it doesn't contradict the first. And then the third law, I believe, is don't do anything to put your own the robot's own safety in jeopardy, unless that would be contradicting the first or second laws. I believe that's what they are. Again, I read a lot of these quite a while ago. I read most of this in kind of one summer, 2012, I think, 2012, 2013, somewhere in there. But yeah, so this is I'm basically going to talk about three separate series. You have the robot series, then you have the middle anthology kind of trilogy of Empire era novels, and then you have the Foundation series of 7 books. And I will actually start off by talking about something that doesn't exist in this universe. This is a small book called The Gods Themselves by Isaac Asimov. It's brilliant. It really kind of bends your mind and makes you think about things in a very, very unique way. Especially, this has 3 sections. The middle section, just the type of perspective that he's writing from, it's so alien and unusual, and I think anyone interested in sci-fi that really makes you think and ask questions that you wouldn't be asking otherwise, you should really give The Gods Themselves a try. But yeah, this at least, it's not really connected to the larger universe of the other series that he's written in. So I'll kind of give a quick rundown of what the books are and what formats I have them in. First, I'll talk about the robot stuff. So I don't have a copy of iRobot, and I believe there's only one short story in iRobot that I haven't read, but I do have a number of different collections of robot short stories. So we have Robot Dreams here by Isaac Asimov and Robot Visions. Both of these feature a lot of unique stories. There is a crossover of a couple stories, I think, between these two, but they have some of my favorite science fiction short stories I've ever read. Most of the short stories in here have to do with robots. There are a few random ones that don't, they're just random things Isaac Asimov was working on. I will say something great about this Robot Visions collection is that this whole last section is a bunch of different essays about science fiction, about the kind of themes of Asimov developing these laws for his robots in this world, how that applies to what a human being's internal moral compass might be, what laws we set for ourselves, subconsciously or otherwise. So a lot of great stuff like that to kind of get where Asimov was coming from and the sort of the existential kind of questions he's grappling with and things he's trying to address in a lot of these earlier short stories. So yeah, I do recommend, if anyone is interested in getting into Asimov, starting with either of these collections. There's a ton of great stories in both of them. That's Robot Dreams and Robot Visions. And then I got my hands on this great book, which is The Rest of the Robots by Isaac Asimov, and a few collections had already been made of some of his stories, and so that's why this one's called The Rest of the Robots. I believe there's like 6 short stories at the beginning of it, but then the back half is the first 2 novels. They're pretty short novels that he wrote about robots, and so this is The Caves of Steel and The Naked Sun are the first 2 in a series of 4 novels that he would eventually write about the robots. And whereas a lot of the short stories kind of might be closer to when robots were being invented and being worked out and the laws were being kind of developed, when you get chronologically to the point where the setting of these novels, the robots are pretty far along in their development. So I do definitely recommend, if you want to read all things Isaac Asimov's robots, read a lot of the short stories before you get into much of the novels themselves. The robot books at least start out kind of like investigative mystery type things, sort of detective, sci-fi detective robot books. So really cool kind of intersection of a few different genres there. But yet I love that I have this collection, The Rest of the Robots, with 6 great stories at the beginning. Again, only I think a couple of them are repeats of things that are in Robot Visions and Robot Dreams. And then the first 2 novels all collected in one book right here, The Rest of the Robots. Then, so that was the first 2 novels. The third novel in this robot series is Robots of Dawn. And this one starts to get into one of the more maybe mystical elements or kind of mind-bending elements that Asimov puts in his science fiction. He does a lot that sort of tries to adhere to kind of practical, mechanical, technological sense, what might be technologically possible. But there's stuff to do with how the mind works and how robots can figure out how the mind works and what that might lead to as far as the evolution of not just the robots, but the evolution of the human race, what certain humans might be able to do eventually. And this book really introduces some of those ideas. Now, I should say, at this point in time, he didn't just write all of these first and then another series and then another series. He was writing the Foundation books around the same time. He was writing some of his Empire books around the same time. So it was just kind of like he was playing around with a lot of the same ideas, even if in the timeline of his world, the first 2 novels and this one, Robots of Dawn, even though they're all about the same characters in the robot books, all of this happens, 20,000 years before the Foundation series does. So even though there's that big time gap, there a lot of the same kind of themes and concepts are being played around with here, and you start to see that in Robots of Dawn. This is also a little longer than Caves of Steel and The Naked Sun, and I think it's just this one's a slightly more compelling mystery. So yeah, that's Robots of Dawn, book 3, and then book 4 in the robot series is Robots and Empire, and that title is kind of an echo of a title that he has in the Foundation series, but this one is really about the robots and their own sort of identity and what they think about their place in the world. At this point, you have 2 kind of main character robots visiting a number of different planets and locations and trying to figure out what colonization means for the human race, what galactic expansion means for the human race, and what it might mean for what robots' role is in all of this. This is a really kind of this book's a lot. It's a lot of theorizing. It's not as like, if you're looking for a really great plot, this might not be the one for you, but if you want a lot of great conversations about robots sort of considering their place in the world, Robots and Empire, this is the 4th book in the Robots series. So that's it for Robots. Again, that's like, let's see, sorry. Okay, so these are the short story collections, and then these are some short stories starting over here, and the first 2 novels starting over here, and then book 3 and book 4. There you go, that's Robots. And then he has, in that sort of 20,000 year time gap, he has 3 books that aren't really connected to each other or connected to much of the rest of what's going on. And these were some of the first ones I read of his, because I heard that they weren't as compelling, and I knew I wanted to read as much as I could of Asimov, and I kind of wanted to knock these out of the way. But first of these is Stars Like Dust. It's okay. It kind of reads just like a classic adventure science fiction book. It's fine. And then the second one is The Currents of Space. It deals with some interesting concepts like currents of certain elements, like actual elements in chemistry, traveling through space, and sort of like on the breeze, but there's not a breeze in space. There's not a current to carry these different things around the galaxy, around the universe. So what is causing these? Are these from exploded star? Like, it's really, really interesting astronomical kind of sci-fi considerations here. The actual characters and everything like that, it's not as, again, not as gripping as Robots, definitely not as gripping as anything in Foundation. But that's the second book in this middle kind of loosely connected Empire trilogy. And then the third is Pebble in the Sky. Now, I'm not exactly sure if I remember right here, but I think this might take place before or after Currents of Space, but it's all about Earth and where Earth is, what becomes of Earth. That's a really big question and sort of problem, I guess, an issue that Asimov has his characters deal with in this whole big universe, especially when we get to the Foundation series. And so this book being set on Earth, and some of just the other sci-fi things that they're talking about in here, it's an interesting book. Again, none of these 3 are my favorites, but it's interesting. So yeah, that's that trilogy: Stars Like Dust, The Currents of Space, Pebble in the Sky. Then we go forward to the Foundation series. And I've got this, Barnes & Noble does these pretty copies with the gold edges and the bookmark thing. There's Harry Seldon on the cover, and Trantor in the back. I think that's the name of, is that the name of the main city planet? I think so. And so yeah, this is how I read the Foundation trilogy. This was where I started. Then I read those 3 Empire books that, all come at various points in time in the 20,000 years between Earth as we know it now and what's going on here. And it blew me away. I mean, really, the first Foundation book is like, it's kind of like 5 short stories, and then the second one is like 2 novellas, and the third one is like 2 novellas. But they're all really great stories, kind of each one moving so far, again, forward in time to see how this great experiment of a planet with a planet that is supposed to be successful and is supposed to kind of shepherd the human race into this new shining era of progress, based on all of these calculations. This I guess social scientist Harry Seldon developed all of this algorithm he kind of came up with to make the perfect planet, to make a society sort of a utopia, but not quite, but one that could weather all of the political intergalactic wars and struggles that are to come. This sort of like power of prediction, power over societies. Really interesting stuff, and that's what this whole trilogy is really about. These big jumps forward to, let's check in on how's this Foundation planet. How's I think Terminus is the name of the planet that they go to. But how is it doing? What conflict are they dealing with now? That's the Foundation trilogy, kind of in a nutshell, without spoiling too much. There's a character named the Mule, who's one of my favorite characters in all of fiction, and he features prominently in the second and third books of this trilogy. So yeah, Asimov wrote these three. These were three of the first books he had published, some of the three first books he had published. And then he wrote 4 more, and those were 2 prequels to the trilogy, and that was Prelude to Foundation and Forward the Foundation. So yeah, Prelude and Forward. This one comes first. So if you wanted to read all 7 books in all 7 of the Foundation series in chronological order, I'd say start here. But these 2 actually do a decent amount of work connecting, like the Empire trilogy, not so much that trilogy, but pulling some of the stuff talked about and established way back when in the Robots series. These help to bridge that gap a little, even though they happen like right before the first Foundation novel takes place. Certain characters, certain themes and questions and locations that they visit they kind of a lot of callbacks to what's going on there. Not as much as will be in the last couple books we talk about, but yeah, this kind of starts Asimov's big project of really trying to connect all of these things. And both of these, I guess the simplest way to put it, these are about how the social scientist, social historian, Harry Seldon, psychological historian, how he developed his idea of the Foundation, how he, figured out what was wrong and what was not going well in a good direction with human society and the current state of the Empire, and started to try and work out a way to develop what the Foundation would become, what his kind of like a haven away from the middle of the Empire could look like. These 2 books have a lot about him working on that, getting that up to speed. And then, last but not least, in my opinion at least, we have Foundation's Edge and Foundation and Earth. This is book 6 and book 7 chronologically. I really like this, where as I mentioned, that the Foundation trilogy really kind of reads more like a collection of a few short stories and novellas. This is like one of the first proper novels that I feel like he wrote in the Foundation part of his timeline, and it is such a fun adventure, and it deals with this one planet that is one of the most unique science fiction creations I've ever read about. Really interesting characters. This is one of the first times reading these books where there's been like more than 2 characters that I really cared about or felt connected with in one individual story. So yeah, really interesting team we have kind of going on their adventure here, or starting their adventure I should say. What they find at the end of it, that's really fascinating. I kind of alluded to it with the planet I mentioned, and just the creation that it is, how it makes you think about what's possible in the universe. That's this book. Then Foundation and Earth really does so much heavy lifting as far as tying all of these different, like these 3 series together. And really, I mean, it's a very satisfying conclusion. I wasn't like riveted, and it didn't excite me the most going through it, but they go to another planet and I'd be like, oh, that makes sense. That's where they were in that book. Okay, I see what they're doing. I see how he's trying to bring everything to a close here with Foundation and Earth. So, just to see, this is the Foundation series, the trilogy, and then Prelude to sorry, Prelude, Forward, Edge, Earth. Yeah. So now I'll do a quick ranking of all of these. No surprise based on what I just said, but Stars Like Dust, first of these Empire books, that comes in at 14th place. Fortunately, sorry. I would say if I reread this, I might get it higher. I don't even remember too much about it. That would draw me back to do another reread, and I have so much to read already. So sorry, but this might just, drop down there. So that's 14th place. Then Pebble in the Sky, that comes in at 13th place, and The Currents of Space comes in 12th place. And then I think the second of the robot novels I would give, which is the end of this Rest of the Robots collection, that one's called The Naked Sun, and I would put that in 11th place. It's just it's still kind of like a detective mystery sort of thing. They're not on Earth. They are on Earth in Caves of Steel, the first detective kind of robot novel. In Naked Sun, they're not, so that's interesting. But the actual elements of the mystery, I didn't find as compelling, and I didn't find as tricky to kind of guess and figure out what was going on. And the final reveal just didn't have as much of an impact. So that's why Naked Sun comes in 11th place. Then I'm gonna put Forward, the Foundation. Again, this is kind of like part 2 of Prelude, where they're just, establishing where Harry Seldon's mind is at and developing this big, great foundation system. And it's fine, but I don't think it's particularly necessary or essential to understanding the greater Foundation Robots universe. And then I'm gonna go back to this collection, the Rest of the Robots collection, and I'm gonna say The Caves of Steel, the first robot detective novel. Again, it's good, but because it's so focused on just the laws of robotics and a detective figuring out how a crime went down, it's not as focused on a lot of these big ideas that the final 2 robot novels would be a lot more concerned with. And that's the stuff that really, really appeals to me. So yeah, Caves of Steel comes in 9th place, 9 out of 14. And then in 8th place, I'm gonna put the first book in the Foundation trilogy, just called Foundation. This is the one that is really kind of like 5 or 6 short stories. A couple of those I would rank a lot higher. Some of them dragged a little bit for me, but I feel like 8th place it sounds kind of low on this list, but I think that should just be a testament to how amazing I think the rest of everything Asimov's written actually is. That Foundation, one of his most famous books, comes in so low. Yeah. Then in 7th, I'm gonna do, where is it? Sorry. I'm gonna do Robots of Dawn, the third robot novel. This is sort of bridging between the kind of detective stuff of the first 2 and the more philosophical, what's a robot's place in the world stuff of the 4th book. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. Robots of Dawn, 7th place. Then in 6th place, I'll say Foundation and Earth. I kind of explained already that I enjoy kind of all the callbacks to everything that we've talked about here, and how this is kind of just really putting a nice end cap on the end of the series. However, I don't think it particularly, well, it calls back to a lot of my favorite stuff about the series. A lot of my favorite stuff itself isn't really found in this one. So it's a tricky one to rank, but for how much I enjoy the rest of the series and how much this book clearly respects everything that came before, I can't put it too much lower. So I've got it right now in 6th place. This and Robots of Dawn could switch. Robots of Dawn might be in and of itself just a little bit more interesting. But right now, as the list stands, I'll say Robots of Dawn 7th place, Foundation and Earth 6th place. And then the last robot book I have to talk about, Robots and Empire. I'm gonna make sure, or I'm gonna put this in 5th place. Again, some of my favorite stuff with the robots and some of my favorite robot short stories and Dreams and Visions and Rest of the Robots is all the stuff that has to deal with the robots considering the laws that govern their actions, and we're thinking about what that means for society as a whole and their place in society as a whole. And that's really all this book. I mean, just so many great conversations between a couple of robot characters. Robots and Empire, great book. Comes in at 5th place though. Then 4, I'm gonna say, is Prelude to Foundation. I thought it was cool. I thought there's a bit more adventure and kind of action and excitement in this prequel to the Foundation trilogy as opposed to Forward the Foundation. That's more just Harry Seldon thinking about and developing the way that it's going to work. This one is figuring out what's going on in the Empire, how the Empire might be failing, and he has a companion in this book who ties a lot of things really nicely together from all of these series, and starts to, just the conversations between Harry and that character are, they're very enlightening about, and they kind of help to show what Asimov was going for thematically with all of these disparate different series within the bigger series. Prelude to Foundation, very good book. The twist at the end of who a certain character was really caught me by surprise. I mean, well, I was like, no, this person can't be that person, can it? And then in the end, they were, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. So yeah, Prelude, kind of, especially because of that moment, when you really find out who somebody is, it comes in at 4th place, Prelude. Then, I'll say in 3rd place, we have the second of the we have the 3rd Foundation trilogy book, which is called Second Foundation. I think it's really good. I enjoy Asimov, I think, a little more when his stories are slightly lengthier. So that's why I like the 2 novella length kind of stories we get, or benchmarks we get, of the Foundation's development in Second Foundation, I like those 2 more than the 5 short story benchmarks that we got in the first book of the trilogy. So yeah, Second Foundation, very, very good book. It's one of the big reasons why this trilogy is so beloved, and obviously just by the title you might be able to guess it poses interesting questions about, is there a mysterious other system, other place that is doing the same sort of thing? Was it also set up by Harry Seldon? Was it set up by somebody else? Was it set up at a different point in time? What's actually going on here? So yeah, Second Foundation, very good book. Yeah, and then in 2nd place, I'm just going to keep holding this up. 2nd place is Foundation and Empire. This is a tough call. I think if all of Foundation and Empire, the middle book here, was the storyline about, specifically about the mule, then, and it got expanded a little more, I think that would probably be my favorite. But there is another story that really just seems like just a storyline, a slightly longer benchmark story that didn't fit in the first Foundation book. But yeah, once Asimov starts to write about the mule and everything going on there, and that sort of challenge to the Foundation, I love every second of it. So yeah, Foundation and Empire, an easy 2nd place, could be 1st place, depending on what day I'm doing this. But so a lot of the times, because of that other story in it, I'm gonna give it 2nd. Then in 1st place, Foundation's Edge. I gushed a little bit about it when I was kind of going through explaining the series, and I just mentioned that I like when Asimov writes, I think, just slightly longer stories, gives his characters a little more time to breathe and grow, and for us to get invested in them, and that really happens here. And just the sci-fi concepts he deals with here that have maybe been hinted at in some of the other books, he really brings a lot of those concepts to the fore, and I just love this book. It deals with so many interesting questions, things that I've been wondering for all the other books in the series, and even though there might not be a ton of answers, the fact that he's still posing new questions, introducing new characters, new concepts at this point is wonderful, and really continues to expand your mind and expand what you think might be possible with where the future of the human race could go, what could be possible as far as things like consciousness and just the way in which the universe works. Wonderful stuff. Foundation's Edge easily comes in first place. So yeah, there's pretty much the whole thing. If anyone's interested in getting started on the series, I would say either start with the Foundation trilogy like I did, and if you like that, then you can read Prelude and Forward, which are the prequel books to the trilogy, and then you can read Foundation's Edge and Foundation and Earth, which are the sequel books to the trilogy. And if you start Foundation and you're not the biggest fan, I would still recommend going in and giving the robot short stories a try. And if you like that and the questions raised about these laws that they have to follow, on the limits of those, and how robots interact with human society and vice versa, then yeah, you can dive into Caves of Steel, The Naked Sun, Robots of Dawn, and Robots and Empire, that series of novels. So yeah, please let me know if you have any more questions about this series down below in the comments, or if you think some of my rankings are a little bit wild or random and crazy, please let me know that too. If you want to see maybe some more sci-fi specific content, because I know I do focus a lot more on specifically like fantasy stuff. If you want to see more sci-fi stuff, don't hesitate to ask, and please like and subscribe. Share with any of your friends. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.